Councils across the country are implementing what they call climate emergencies. I'm not really sure what that actually means, but after they do this, they seem to start imposing all kinds of new policies that go along with new agendas. Now, someone who's been watching this very, very closely in Colchester is Rachel Mathews. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Hello, David.
Hi, Rachel. No, it's great to have you with me. Now, you started off Colchester Council Watch, and I understand you've recently changed the name of that just to Council Watch Colchester and Countrywide because you made a video about what Colchester Council were doing, which was so good it went viral, and lots of other people around the country have heard of you now and what you're doing to hold the council to account. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what you were concerned about that your council in Colchester was doing, and why you started the council watch that you've done?
Yes, well, initially we went along because there had been a flyer sent round that they were thinking of making Colchester carless. So we went along to their environment and sustainability panel meeting to find out what on earth was going on. And then to our horror, we found that they were planning on putting EVs everywhere we'd already got the electric scooters littered around the entire town, or city as they like to refer to themselves these days. And they were bringing in all these bikes as well, and e-cargo, and they wanted a rapid transit bus system so that people aren't driving into town. It's all electric vehicles. And of course, we'd seen so many of these EV fires, and bearing in mind this was a year
Mm.
ago before it was really that you weren't seeing them many places, but on alternative social media like Telegram, you were seeing them every single day. So we went along to warn them, look, this stuff is really dangerous. And in so doing, we started to research more and discovered not only of the fire hazard aspects, but also the making of them isn't remotely green.
Mm.
Extracting lithium, and then there's the cobalt with some batteries have, not all, and that's the child slave labor. And it was just the more we dug into it, the more of a minefield it was. So that's the video. Some clips went viral on Twitter and various other social media. People did sort of snippets from that meeting or several meetings, and several of us go along. It's not just me, but
Mm.
I'm sort of more known because I do the video presentation. So we started up Council or Colchester Council Watch channel originally, so that we didn't know how councils run. None of us knew anything. So we started observing all of their streamed meetings to get a feel for how it worked. And then after sort of 9 months of doing this, we thought, well, really everyone in Colchester should be understanding how the council functions and the decisions they are making on our behalf. So we thought, well, I'll just do sort of a compilation video because their meetings often go on for sort of 3 or 4 hours,
Mm.
and no one in their right mind is going to sit through that. So I thought we'll just do some snippets. And then before I knew it, the topics got larger than just what was happening in Colchester because there
Mm.
was some 5G stuff came up. So I ended up interviewing Ian Jarvis, who I'm sure many of your viewers have heard
Mm.
of. And then I got embroiled in sort of the farming thing and ended up interviewing Sandy Adams for the behind the scenes of
Mm.
why the government is being steered to basically render our farmland wildflowers and solar farms. So the channel has ended up being so much more. So Colchester Council Watch didn't seem the appropriate name for it anymore. And as you've mentioned, lots of people have also been inspired, which was part of the reason we did it, that all up and down the country, we should be having Council Watch and everybody understanding what it is their councils do.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more because a lot of this agenda, which is very, very harmful to the way of life, just the normal way of things that we've gone about and have taken for granted for all of our lives, is being changed deliberately. I mean, you can call this what you like, the New World Order, the Great Reset, the leveling up, devolution, I don't know, all these kind of things, Agenda 2030, they're all related to each other. But no, I think what you've done is absolutely fantastic. But as you say, it's very, very difficult to get engaged as an ordinary person because not many people have any kind of understanding at all about what the council does, how it operates, who the people are. When I was on the London Assembly, they used to talk about this climate stuff all the time, and I was on the Environment Committee. And I went on the Environment Committee because I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I can, like, help out with parks and trees and things, but it was all about imposing a climate emergency and getting people not to use cars, putting restrictions on cars and things like that. Um, but the thing is here, I mean, do the councillors know what they're doing? I mean, do they actually genuinely believe that introducing electric vehicles is a good thing, or have they got some alternative motive as well?
I think the vast majority genuinely believe they're doing good with it. And that
Ah.
is very difficult to tackle when
Mm,
because basically it's people's beliefs. So one of the things that we've done or tried to do with our speeches, we had some coaching from David Charalambous, who is from
mm,
reachingpeople.net, and he made it very clear it doesn't matter how much facts and information you give people. If it's not on the map in their mind, they simply will not be able to process it. So
mm.
we've gone in trying to put some additional information on their maps that, look, these EV productions aren't as green and good as you think they are. So little by little, if you keep adding more information, when you finally do come in and say it out loud, look, net zero is a load of rubbish, you've done so much preliminary work that they are more open to it. Some, not all,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, well, look, Rachel, don't go away. We're going to have a quick news break now, as we're halfway through the hour, but we'll come back and talk more about this in a minute. This is today's News Talk, TNT. There is no climate emergency. That's what I say. That's what I think anybody who is thinking would say. But climate emergencies are being declared all over the country. Now, Rachel Mathews is here talking about Colchester Council in particular. But what she's saying about Colchester would apply to any council around the country. There are 317 local councils in England, and almost all of them are following the same path as Colchester in declaring a climate emergency and then changing things and policies that happen in their area. So welcome back, Rachel. You were talking about this very, very well before the break. You were just saying in the break something interesting that most of the councillors don't even know what a climate emergency means. I mean, has anyone there explained to you exactly what that means?
Not in a clear way. We wrote to
Mm,
them requesting that they explain precisely what the parameters of this climate emergency are. So
mm,
otherwise, how will they know when it's over? If there's no measurable,
mm,
definable boundaries of this said climate emergency, when will they realize that whether what they're doing is working or not? And that
mm,
really stopped them. And the best they could come back with is, well, the IPCC said that we must keep the temperature below a 1.5 degree centigrade increase. And
mm,
then we sort of if people go onto our YouTube channel, there's a Dropbox resource folder, and there is a 9-month email stream backwards and forwards with me saying, well, how do you know what you're doing in Colchester? Can you evidence the
mm.
impact that is going to have on global temperatures? And needless to say, they can't. So by the end of the street, I mean, it's both depressing and amusing at the same time. I had a climate scientist, Ralph Ellis, read through it, and he did say I was laughing out loud with most of the stream of this conversation because I start out very polite. And by the end of it, it's like, I really don't care what you believe. Will you
Mm.
please provide us some evidence? And they couldn't.
Yeah, the thing is, this is dangerous in a way, if you like. I mean, I think it is because when they declare it, then they start doing these things like you've said, introducing electric vehicles, then blocking off the roads with things like low traffic neighborhoods. Then they give permission for solar panels to be built all over prime agricultural land, which I think is horrendous. I mean, they call themselves green, but that's the least green thing you could do because they're destroying the countryside. I mean, have you seen any of these other things? Wind turbines, solar panels, lots of 5G towers, and also these battery electric storage systems that are now coming up. Have they been on the agenda in Colchester?
Yes, very much so. And actually, one of the first videos I made on that channel was the Plat one on planning. And it is shocking when you see how much the councillors have their arms literally tied behind their back. You cannot turn down these planning applications. And they came up with all these really good reasons for these solar. They wanted to put a solar farm quite close to a school and near Colchester Zoo. So if that went up with the battery storage area, there was two primary schools, a little village, and depending on which direction the wind blowed, it Colchester Zoo as well. And as I'm sure everyone's aware of how toxic the fumes are from lithium battery fire. But the Secretary of State has overruled you are not allowed to turn down a planning application for lithium battery or solar farm on the grounds of safety. You've got to view it as a neutral
Wow.
planning guide. And it's like, well, how can the potential of killing children and obviously all these animals in the zoo, how can you have that as a neutral consideration? So they make it very, very difficult. So what we've started doing now is going along because food security is one of the 13 key infrastructures, critical infrastructures that they have to allow for. So what we've now requesting, and we've just started to, obviously they're breaking now because they're all trying to get re-elected. But as soon as they come back, we're going to pursue them further with, you've got to put food security on the local plan so that the planning councillors have the ability to turn solar farms down based on food security. At the moment, there's virtually no grounds that they can turn them down on.
That is astonishing. I mean, that's absolutely terrible. I didn't know that. I mean, I'm against them, and the Heritage Party. We've got a few councillors at town and parish level, and we're opposing these things where we can. But I didn't know the Secretary of State had said that. So it's essentially you've got local government, but they're not allowed to turn down solar farms, solar panels. I mean, that's appalling. But
It's
you
difficult,
also
yes.
mentioned the sort of slavery aspect of these, because a lot of these electric vehicles and solar panels are actually manufactured with slave labor. I mean, is there any way that we can be sure that if you buy a solar panel from anywhere, that it isn't tainted by slave labor?
It is difficult. There's now I don't know anything about the publication, but Ethical Consumer have done a lot of research on this, and they say it's almost impossible to buy one that hasn't
Mm,
had some slavery at some point in the supply chain. But they do
mm,
give a list of the ones with the least amount in.
mm.
But
Okay,
also, the
yeah.
council have an anti-slavery policy on their website, and they are not following it clearly because they're
Mm,
just certainly with their purchases with the EVs.
yeah. But I mean, the thing is, what do we do about this? Because you've been doing this for a year or two, something. I don't know. You started in 2022, 2023, so that's been going a couple of years on this, and have you changed the minds of any councillors about this, or do we need to actually vote these people out and get in new people who will then undeclare a climate emergency, if you like, and just go back to common sense?
Well, it feels like 10 years, but actually it's only been 1 year. But
Okay.
basically, we're going in serving a verbal notice and putting it on public record, but they have no
Mm,
legal obligation to do anything like that. So we've just started working with a paralegal, a lovely man
mm.
called Damien Jones, who's a big fan of yours, by the way.
Ah,
And he's helping us actually step things up a bit so that we can actually get the more legal proceedings against them because they aren't following their own procedures by which they are governed. So otherwise, if we carry on going like we've been going, we're as guilty of coming out with as much hot air as they are because we're not getting anywhere. We have had
mm,
an impact on some of the councillors. With the first time they voted for a climate emergency, it was unanimous with all 51. They had another just before Christmas to try and put more pressure on the government for more funding for their climate emergency, but 17 of them voted no, and they stated
mm,
many of the reasons we have brought forward. They have also agreed in principle to a net zero debate, but they are proving to be rather difficult to tie them down to a date
Mm.
as when we'll get that debate with proper climate scientists. They can provide whoever they want, and we've got some brilliant people to come forward, and then we can have a proper debate with all of the councillors there and anyone from the surrounding area that is interested to know more. And then once we've had that debate, then we're requesting that they scrutinise that decision and really look at whether they have the evidence to have declared a climate emergency in the first place.
Indeed. Look, I mean, Rachel, I think you're doing an amazing work, and it is frustrating because these things take a long time. And, I can see through things clearly. You can, many of our viewers can, but, I think about the whole lockdown periods. Everyone was, nudged and manipulated to support that, immediately. But then, it's taken 3 or 4 years for people to come round, and now the majority view is it wasn't good. And the same with the injections, and then this whole transgenderism thing we've got that came out of nowhere in sort of 2015, and then that was mainstreamed. And it's only now with the Cass report 7, 8, 9 years later, after so much damage has been done, that things are turning back the other way. And now the majority view, even in the establishment, seems to be, oh my goodness, we've made a big mistake with this transgenderism. Well, I mean, I could have told them that at the beginning, because chopping bits off people's bodies isn't going to help them in any way. But with this net zero, I think this is another huge sort of stronghold in people's minds that have been it's been created. It's not real, but it's a lot of people adhere to it. So how long do you think is going to take to actually get rid of this ideology from the public sphere, and to turn people around to common sense again?
That's a difficult question to answer. I would imagine there'll just come this tipping point and all of a sudden people will get it. But a lot of
Mm.
the problem we have within the council is the indoctrination. And a lot of the time, it's not actually the councillors per se that are pushing this forward, although there are obviously ones that are very passionate about
Mm.
all net zero and everything that goes with it. But a lot of the time, it is the council officers, and they've all been on this carbon literacy training,
Mm.
which is quite scary. If you ever read through that, and again, it's in our Dropbox resource folder, that's just what's written down. If you actually go through the 2 days of training, they are wanting the councillors and the officers to get hold of groups, vulnerable groups, and basically convince them that it's their part to play to get everybody
Mm.
to go green. So they're almost creating these little groups to come around and basically tell everyone you're not green, and pass that education on so that everybody, I mean, I think when Sandy Adams spoke about it, she said in what she's read, they said that you should be encouraging people to just have one child. And you've got to have the net zero diet. Well, doesn't that sound delightful? Mind you,
Great.
the information is incorrect on farming and cattle anyway, because methane is recycled in 12 years. So that really isn't a problem. And a lot of the
Mm.
stuff is completely false. So it's a matter
Yeah.
of re-educating, and that's what we try and do as much as possible, rather than go in all stroppy and table thumping. We try and educate people, because if you can
Yeah.
reach them that way, they can make their own decisions.
Absolutely. Well, you're doing a great job, Rachel, both in Colchester and around the country now. So I wish you every success in getting climate realism back onto the political agenda. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me here on today's News Talk, TNT.